Greetings and welcome to the Equity.Guru Investor Roundtable. A little bit different approach today and in the coming days as we go sector crazy. And today's sector is psychedelics. And that's why I have my That 70s Show haircut. That's right.
Looks very nice.
I'm with Galen and
shirt.
Vishal and Chris Perry, the guru himself. We're going to be talking about, and now obviously the sector is not limited to these, but Mr. Galen has written up a beautiful piece about this sector for us today on the Equity.Guru website, which includes MYND Life Sciences. That's MYND, MYND, same symbol on the Canadian composite. MCUR, which we've talked about before under CEO Kelsey Ramsden, MCUR is the symbol. PharmaTher is PharmaTher Holdings. Is that how you say it?
PharmaTher.
PharmaTher, and that's out of Vancouver. PHRM and Neonmind Biosciences. That's Neon on the Canadian exchange. Give us the 50,000 foot, the 30,000 foot, depending on what airplane you're piloting.
150,000 foot. Here we go.
150,000 foot view of this sector and these companies.
You got
it. SpaceX levels, Galen.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting up there.
Hopefully better performance. All right. From 150,000 feet, the psychedelic sector is littered with unicorns, overvalued, overpromising, and a lot of also-rans. It's difficult to sort of find the differentiated companies within the space, the ones that can give you a real nice ground floor opportunity with an actual viable mandate, and not just say, hey, in a year we plan to sell $1 million worth of psychedelics. So what I've done is I've written up a bit of a list. You may feel them how you do, but I really like these companies. I think there's something to them, at least with a unique approach. First off is MindCure Health. That is a Canadian company which has three prongs in its business approach. It has a technology platform called iStream, which is a assistive digital technology for psychotherapy. It's agnostic, can be applied to anything, but they're developing that right off the bat, getting out into commercialization right away. Then they also have a development for a synthetic ibogaine molecule. For therapy, of course, for PTSD and such. And then they're also working in something called the Desire Project, which services an underrepresented segment of the population, women suffering from hypoactive sexual desire disorder, which is quite painful and it's emotionally and is something that really does need to be addressed. And they actually are focusing on this, which is very interesting. Led by Kelsey Ramsden, the CEO, was one of the few women in the industry that is actually a leader within the corporate arena.
Now, before you jump into the next one,
yes,
does other fellas have any initial thoughts, questions, or concerns about, or joy about MindCure?
Well, we talked about MindCure recently,
yep,
and I think gave them a little bit of a stock jump in doing so. I like the technology aspect of this. I think that they're going about it in a smart way, and they're finding a niche that's important to at least half of the population. Mm-hmm. And should be important to the other half by virtue of that. The struggle here is real on the stock front. Everybody in the psychedelic sector is being dragged down by the tides because there's so many companies that don't really have a business model. I think MindCure does, and I like the fact that that all of their work is out there for everybody to see. I don't know what they have to do to push back against the tide that is psychedelics just not getting the regulatory changes that they need in order to be a real business. But this is on my list of a very small list of psychedelic companies that I'm really supportive of and think are doing the right thing.
What's your guys' take on the sentiment here on the psychedelics? I mean, we might not be fans of him, but Kevin O'Leary has been putting a lot of YouTube videos. I know a lot of younger people are actually more involved on the psychedelic side, I would say, compared to, say, cannabis for sure. I know a lot of, I guess you can call them amateur traders, or well, I guess they're just long-term investors as well. I know a lot of them have been jumping into MindMed and a lot of psychedelic stocks because they're getting a lot of attention on YouTube and social media. So I think, what do you guys think of that distinguishment there between
Well,
younger crowd there?
I think what's hitting the psychedelic sector right now is it's actually hit the reality trough.
Okay.
We've gone through the excitement phase, and oh my God, this is a groundbreaking method of treating major depressive disorder and a bunch of other neurological disorders, and has much more applications than just that. Weight gain, inflammation, all sorts of interesting things. But the thing is that we're in a bit of a legislative morass right now. And quite honestly, there's a bunch of old stodges in charge of what's going on as far as lawmaking is concerned. And those wheels are going to move pretty fucking slow and possibly in the wrong direction occasionally.
Right.
So it'll be
It's like early cannabis, right?
Okay.
Except with cannabis, there was a lawsuit that was rolling through the courts that was pushing laws to change. There's no lawsuit here to speak of. Okay. It's just, psychiatrists knowing that it's an important thing. And saying, can we use this? And the government going, like maybe next election. In the meantime, you guys can just keep buying your Airbnbs in the Caribbean and calling them psychiatric clinics and pretending that that's going to make enough money that you guys are going to be successful public companies with $100 million valuations. The companies that say, listen, we're not going to make any money for the next 2 years, but we'll be ready when it happens, bully for them. The companies that are all like, we bought a mushroom farm in Langley. We're going to make money this month. GFYS. You know what I'm saying?
All right. On that note, Galen, who's up next?
All right. Okay. Next company I'd like to talk about is MYND Life Sciences. Excuse me as I try and catch my breath. They've got some great relationships going, a world-class research facility at UBC, the Michael Smith Laboratories, where they're going into research into 38 different analogs of psilocybin, determining which is most effective in modulating the human mycogene, and that's the actual receptor that gets turned on, I guess you could say, whenever you're doing psilocybin. And they're trying to figure out the best way that they can manipulate that and add the most effective treatment. Now, their idea is that most chronic depression is attributed to neurological inflammation. And what they're trying to do is develop a drug candidate that will deal with that inflammation and thus, as a byproduct, also deal with the depression itself. So it's an interesting new approach, not what other people have sort of got upon. A lot of science here. And as I said, top grade research associations. And I think it has a good niche because they're developing a new science in the sector, rather than just going, we're just going to heal depression.
Right. What would you say, Galen, about their Health Canada license? Do you think that's a competitive advantage that they have over some of these other companies?
Absolutely, it is. I mean, you have to have some sort of, key or cachet. There we go. That was the word I was looking for. When you actually have support from Health Canada, and that was what many of the participants in the marijuana sector were looking for early on.
Right, yeah.
And it really does help. And there's not a lot of companies that do have that. They are trying to grab IP that's not necessarily theirs. These guys actually have something that's coming from the ground up, and as I said, is a unique approach to the sector. So I'm interested in them. They're smaller cap, comparatively speaking, and have a better ground floor opportunity for investment.
Zap us with the next one.
All righty then. Moving on.
Before you do,
all right.
I got a few things.
Please.
So these guys, MYND, for those that are looking it up online, MYND Life Sciences. If I go back to the cannabis years, early on when everyone was pretending to do some stuff for patients because that was the only thing allowed, there were a lot of companies that were like, we're going to research what strains are good for cancer and what are good for a bad back and what are good for your eyesight. But then when it came down to it, Health Canada said, sure, weed is fine, but don't you dare go out there and tell people that it'll fix your problems.
Right.
So all that research went for shit because there's no way to actually apply it other than, in non-cannabis focused drugs. So my concern with psychedelics is that you've got a lot of guys that are doing a lot of research that if it goes well, sure, they might have a SKU that they can call their own. but it may well just be in the end that the medical use of psilocybin gets all squished together into one generic sort of formulation.
Yeah.
And a lot of the effort that's going to specifically like biomarkers on multiple sclerosis and Alzheimer's, that's all great. It's all necessary. But when the gates actually open to the business and the government says, okay, so, you know, we're going to allow people to just go to a store and buy this stuff, all of that goes out the window.
Yeah.
So, which isn't to say that these guys aren't doing good work, valuable work, important work, and that they're trying to be responsible adults in the room. It seems from all the news that I can find that they actually are. And there's a lot of very brainy people in the middle of it all that are, you know, taking the opportunity that the license that they have affords them to do important work. It's a little bit expensive to do clinical research and trials. Yeah. And it's a long process. And I don't know if the market looks at that and says, I got to buy into that this week.
No.
This is definitely a long play, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll ever get to the point where psychedelics will be sold over the counter. I don't think that's going to happen. As Kelsey,
well, I mean, it already is.
Well,
eventually,
yes,
just not legally.
Yes, exactly. But as Kelsey pointed out, Kelsey Ramsden, and I tend to think that she's a bit of an expert in the area. Her philosophy is that the cannabis is like driving a Volkswagen while using it is like driving a Volkswagen, while psychedelics are like getting behind the wheel of a Ferrari. I don't know. It has to be a highly controlled environment and also dosage for it to be effective and not send somebody right over the fucking edge. Because I've seen both in the recreational world, so I don't know.
Both.
Yeah, I don't know if that is a helpful, if it will reach the recreational stage. I don't think, legislatively speaking, it's even in the near term. If anything, it's way down the road.
It's not a vote winner. But what is happening on the street level, literally, is you've got stores all over Vancouver now that are calling themselves the Shroom Store, right? You can look online for dispensaries that'll deliver to your door next day.
Exactly.
That business is in business, and nobody seems to be worried too much about regulating it. Cops aren't busting down doors of mushroom sellers. And there's enough guys out there on Vancouver Island picking around under trees that it'd be difficult to close that business down either way. I will say this, the product in its raw form, just, you know, blundering about in the dark in a hot tub has been exponentially great for my existence. And I can't wait for it to be more legal, so that more people will feel comfortable actually using it in some setting. It's just, man, you like if you're ready to buy at these levels, a $24 million market cap for this, and just sit on it for a couple of years, by all means. But it's a really rough trade right now, and the market's run on the trade, right? So if I'm looking at this company at below 60 cents, with unlikely to be news coming that's going to like change the picture markedly, right? Like an FDA approval of a product or the government lightening up on the regulation, like that stuff would take it to $3 overnight. Short of that, this is you have to be really into the I want to cure Alzheimer's to want to buy in today.
I love the irony, or maybe it's the hypocrisy of the crap that they're allowed to produce that's synthetic, that screws you up enough so that you have to buy something else that counteracts the crap they've already given you. And that stuff's all fine and dandy.
Yeah. The side effects on stuff that's advertised on TV in the US is like, you know, hey, this will cure your anxiety. Also may cause suicidal thoughts. Like, well, now I've got a new thing to be anxious about.
Bleeding eye sockets, sore feet.
Anal leakage.
All right, we got two more to touch on.
Sounds like a good Friday night. All right. The next company is PharmaTher that I want to talk about, PharmaTher Holdings. Speaking of taking drugs to commercialization.
You should spell that one out, man.
Oh, yes, PharmaTher, and that'd be PHRM.C, all one word, PharmaTher Holdings.
Not like Farmer's Fair.
No.
Like you're not going to go buy sweet potatoes.
Like PharmaTher. There we go. Just like that.
PHRM.
Like that hoe over there.
That's right. There you go. They're using ketamine to treat indications such as Parkinson's, depression, and Alzheimer's. ALS, I should say. It's in the second phase clinical trials with the FDA, which is, quite an accomplishment considering the clinical trials world. So they're getting close to human trials in phase 3. We're going to see what happens then. But, I kind of like the way that they're working it. They've also got a technology that they're putting out there called a microneedle patch. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's something you can just place on your arm and it will deliver a subdermal dosage of whatever in a clinical accurate form. And you can administer at home rather than having to go to the clinic or to some other sort of pharmaceutical environment to get your dose of ketamine. That's another thing that they're developing, which is to a certain extent drug agnostic as well. They can apply that to different drugs. So, it's a bit of a both worlds at this point. Yes, dependent on legislation, but it's got a couple of things in the kitty that it can put forward.
Any thoughts, gents, before we go to Neonmind?
Yes. So I remember back in the cannabis days, not to beat that drum too hard again, there were companies, there was one specific company that was looking to apply microneedle tech for diabetes, which I was initially very into because being able to put a patch on you instead of having to give yourself a shot seemed like a good idea. Yep. The problem came in when reality set in that if I come up to you and be like, "Hey, Rob, how you doing?" and hit you on the shoulder, and am I driving 10,000 needles into your arm? What do you do when that thing is out of its chemical? Do you have to replace it? Does it scar? Does it irritate? How long do you have to wear it? How do you clean it? There was all sorts of questions that the company never really answered and eventually disappeared into the woods that a lot of cannabis biotech companies disappeared into. That's not to say that microneedle technology can't work. It's just that on an ongoing basis, difficult to really make it apply in that case. If it's a one shot, then, I can see people totally being into something just being slapped on their arm and getting a consistent small dose of stuff. It's not going to make you high, but could maybe, open up a few channels in your brainstem.
Yeah, I'm just checking to make sure that whether or not it is actual single use. It doesn't actually say if it's single use.
Yeah, the details aren't really there. Yeah. That's my struggle with it. It does not say it can't work. It's just that I've seen it not work before.
Hop on to Neonmind, and then we'll come back down to Vishal for...
Absolutely. Okay, so Neonmind has a very unique approach, again, to the industry rather than just working on major depressive disorder or Parkinson's or ALS. It's actually dealing with the idea of weight control or weight management. Through studies, they've found that psilocybin reduced weight gain by 31 to 28% for low and high dose, respectively, in preclinical studies. I know that from when I used to take mushrooms for shits and giggles, I would not feel incredibly hungry. It wasn't one of these side
because your food talks to you.
Yeah, exactly. Or you just want to sit down and watch the Pink Floyd video and forget everything else, right? So it's not necessarily something that induces hunger and can be helpful in losing weight. However, I guess I can see in that respect that they would have to develop somewhat of a non-psychotropic effect to it, because, why get mind-blendingly high when you just need to avoid eating? I don't know.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I find this image quite interesting here. They're showing the psychedelic market here, and everyone is in the psychiatry box here. You have your Cybin, you have your MindMed, you have your Revive, and then there's Neomind, their own little market space here under obesity.
Yeah, but if you go back through the news releases, I hate to be the bearer of bad tidings here, but it's kind of in my wheelhouse. If I go back through the last year of their news releases, I find some stuff that looks to me like they've bounced around a little bit. At one point, they appointed a chief psychedelic officer. They appointed a music guru to create a playlist. It seems like they've been a company looking for a reason to be a company for a while.
Right.
Now they're doing a 3-phase psychedelic music study, which when it comes right down to it, it's probably a good thing to research because, I can tell you that my trips have been very much informed by what music was playing at the time. But again, we get back to those, like, a company decides to be a psychedelic company and then spends the next 6 months raising money and figuring out what it's raised money for. They had mushroom coffees being sold through VitaSave. There's been a lot of stuff where it's like, what's going to hit? What's going to make the stock price go? And rather than coming up with a business model and letting the market catch up to it. Not to say that there's not serious business going on. It's just that when you look at the share price and you look at the news releases, nothing's really stuck since this company has actually come out. And I really think there could be a culling of psychedelic companies and get it back to 10 or 12 that have a really advanced plan. If I was going to invest in some of them, I think the markets and the share price have shown that Neonmind Biosciences just isn't one of them yet.
I take that point, and it's valid, absolutely. I like the idea that it is in a very separate sector or segment of treatment, and that it actually has plans, whether or not it comes through with them, of launching clinical trials in 2022. So it would be interesting to see what happens, because nobody else is servicing that market, and it is very effective in that market. It's depending on how these guys are able to put it together. Now, past performance, not necessarily an indicator of future prospect, but Chris has a good point. They have bounced around. I think it's a bit better than Better Life Pharma, which has been almost psychotic in its pursuit of revenue in whatever sector it can get its little hands in. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Does it fill out? Does it actually hit its potential, rather than building playlists for the psychedelically impaired?
Which, if anyone has a great psychedelics playlist, by all means, like, put it on Spotify and let's have fun. But I'm not sure that that's a public markets business model.
So Mozart's Requiem would not be probably on the list of fun.
No, Mozart's Rectum would be.
Dark Side of the Moon, man. Has always been for me.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Good one.
Another brick in the wall, baby.
Dark underside of the moon. Yeah. Hey, all right, Chart Man.
All right, Rob. Yeah, first, I just got to say, I guess I'm a new user of microdosing. I haven't done anything hardcore, but just microdosing, and I think it's something that you got to try to believe in. My focus and like the positivity, the optimism. You just feel good, and I can drive my car around, do my stuff, and you do actually feel a difference. So I'm a believer. I like the application, and I'm bullish the sector, because I think that wellness, the wellness effects, and I guess the effects on your mental health too. It's going to be great in the future. But obviously, as Chris and Galen mentioned, it's really down to the political side of things. So just want to, let people know, give it a go, microdose, because then you'll see why I'm bullish on this long term. I like psychedelics better than, I guess, cannabis, but maybe that's just because I don't like the smell of cannabis and stuff. But I see, the health benefits here, and I like the sector long term. Right now, though, as Chris alluded to, a lot of these things are getting beat up. Thanks, Kellen, for bringing up some of these companies, because some of the charts here are interesting, as you guys can sort of see here. PharmaTher actually had an 18% update today, so we'll take a look at that in just a sec. I just have a chart here of the Russell 2000, which is the small cap index, and just like we talked about the cannabis sector, a lot of these markets sectors, could be feeling the pinch overall with the broad market sell-off. The Russell is still sort of struggling, so if this does begin to drop even further, I think there's going to be more pain in psychedelics, and you're actually already seeing the pain. So I have two ETFs here for you guys. Psych, PSYK, and this is the Canadian Horizons psychedelic ETF. Made new lows today, as you guys can see here, and it looks like it's still going to make a few more record lows as we go forward. And then on the US side, we have Advisor Shares Psychedelics, which is PSIL, which also printed new record lows today, but did get a bit of a bump post-market. MYND Life, as we talked about, not much liquidity in the stock, and it also did print new record lows on the 19th. We should mention that there was no volume traded today, and it looks like there's a few days where there's really no shares traded. Breakdown of 62 cents here. It's not really looking too good for MYND Life right now. MyndCure, we talked about that little pop the last time we discussed this company, and they're pretty much back at that support now. So it's either they hold here or they break down and follow basically the rest of the psychedelic sector here into what would be, it would be new record lows if they do break down here. So it's one of those where you got to see if buyers will come in and defend this zone here. And then the outlier, PharmaTher holdings up 18% today, and that is on 297,000 shares. Don't really think there was any news behind that because the latest news was on November 11th. So perhaps it was just an impulse play here, an impulse move here, or maybe people cutting their shorts, which then turned to buys. But there is a big support level here as well at 30 cents. I'm not saying it's a level that you should just buy into just yet. It's still sort of like catching a falling knife on basically a lot of these plays here. So I'd still be a bit patient here and see if you can maybe build on some of this 18% move strength here. And then finally, Neonmind also hit record lows of 7.5 cents on the 29th of October. And we have bounced from those all-time lows up to 12 cents, but we're back now at around 9.5 cents. I'm just, as a technical guy, I sort of see maybe a head and shoulder pattern here, but basically for that to trigger, you're going to have to see buys like basically tomorrow, and then eventually we break out and we see a reversal. And again, I'm not saying that's going to happen. We just have to watch the charts to see if that triggers, and hence why on all my posts I talk about buying when the actual trigger happens, because if you do buy here, it's not a confirmation this pattern is going to happen, and you could easily just turn around and reverse and make new record lows. So an interesting mix of charts here. PharmaTher is the only strong performance today, 18%. But everything else, I mean, if you look at these ETFs, just like we looked at MSOS, showing a lot of weakness here still in the psychedelic space.
I think though that the PHRM, although it's had a good couple of days, if you go back through its chart once a month, it does that. Or going all the way back about 6 months, right? Other than its like May to July massive run, which I'm guessing had a little bit of promotion attached to it.
Probably.
There are guys that jump in and buy this, and it moves hard on a small purchase, right? Like 270,000 shares today, and up it went like a gangbusters.
Yep.
But it doesn't hold, right? It doesn't have enough volume for those raises to stick. So I'd be really surprised if that one doesn't come down again. And, you're seeing a general downward trend.
Exactly. Yeah.
What I will say though is MyndCure is like what is it, a $26 million market cap where it is now. That stock is definitely not moving hard in any direction other than a slow downward, but they do have $16 million cash, $15.5 million cash at the last quarter end, which was announced a month ago. So for a $26 million deal with $15 million cash sitting in there plus a bit of tech, that makes me interested that if something comes along that's a purchasing opportunity, that they've got the ability to do that without having to raise money and dilute.
Anybody spending any money right now, or everybody waiting?
Well, to be honest with you, despite my optimism, I do feel that 2022 is the year that will tell all for most of these companies. Mm-hmm. Right now, we're still a little bit in the hype phase. 2022 is when they're all promising action. I like MyndCure. It's my favorite. And I don't think I'm being biased at that. They've got a really tight balance sheet. CEO that believes very much his cash is king. And I think, they will be the best steward of their capital so far and will remain so. So it'll be very interesting for me to see how they go. Honestly, I'd probably drop 15 on them and wait to see what happens in the new year. The rest of them, I'll wait until see what happens in the new year.
All right, Chris?
Yeah, I'm of the same mind. Not wanting to use the word mind when talking about psychedelic companies, because every company is some deviation of mind this, mind that. But MyndCure, I like that cash position. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities there. They're clearly not that worried about the share price, or they'd be out there doing a lot more promotion than they are. They're building to something, I think, and I don't think it's necessarily going to be like sector upswing required. If I look at Neon, man, I don't see anything there that's going to suddenly juice that thing to 35 cents unless they really sort of break all the rules. PHRM, there's a lot more volatility on that one. It doesn't require a lot to make it go up. Similarly, it doesn't require a lot to make it go down. There's not enough there yet for me to want to take a position. MYND, man, it's a rough start. Like, their time in the market has gone from what, $2.50 down to 50 cents. Like, that's a monumental drop, which tells me, one, the news isn't really making people want to buy, and two, there's been early guys into this deal who 4 months into it being public were happy to get the fuck out.
So do you want to drop something? I just want to make sure I'm
putting a little bit on. Oh yeah, that's right, on the money totals. You putting a little on MYND.C?
Or are you leaving?
Sorry, I would keep him on the watch list, but healthier than a lot.
Right. All right,
I'm sort of in the same boat there as Chris. I think the best setup is MYND.C, just on a technical perspective and the fundamental perspective there. If you do want to, nibble a little bit here, I think that's fine. I wouldn't, throw the whole house at it, but I would maybe put a, 1K or 1,500. I'm just looking at a few of these charts here, Psych, SIL. I even have MindMed here too. That's I guess one of the big poster boys, and it has a pretty substantial breakdown here as well, and it looks like it could go a bit lower. So keep in mind, if you like psychedelics, if you do enter now, obviously it's for the long term, and you probably might get beat up just a little bit more. So for me, I'm still a wait and see. But if there was just a technical setup that looks okay for a bit of basing, it would be out of the bunch. It would definitely be MYND.C, but I wouldn't put too much in just yet. I think there's going to be a better buying opportunity a bit further down the road.
Yeah, the fact that the Kevin O'Learys of the world are into psychedelics, to me, is a problem, not a feature. It's a bug. Those guys are trash and bring down the whole sector.
And they're always late to the party.
Do you think he really took his profits on it?
I don't know, but I'm sure they paid him a bunch to get into it. And Bruce Linton, the same, right? So Bruce Linton's out there doing media interviews about his involvement, telling old cannabis guys what they should be doing after he screwed up the industry. Like, the problem here is that the real business hasn't formed yet, right? The guys that are going to make a fortune out of psychedelics are yet to enter the market. They're just, right now, the guys that are in the market are staking out positions, trying to be first movers and trying to become that Canopy Growth Corp that was in the cannabis business.
Right.
But there's nothing there yet, right? So all there is the juice of FOMO, and it's sector-wise, until there's movement on the government front to really loosen up the rules on psychedelics. Like, what are we all putting money in for? Why do you put money in today and not tomorrow? What are you going to miss out next week that you wouldn't have got in a month, right? So the whole damn sector needs to figure out, like, how to get people excited by it again. And it can't just be, hey, go out there and talk to your guy behind the Denny's and get stoned on Third Beach. It's got to be like, the real business is ... And if you can't do that real business today, then you're in the business of projections. One, we will cure cancer by 2050. Oh, will you? Who's going to be around when it's 2050? We will. Charlize Theron will be dating me by this time next year. I don't know that she will, but hey, I'm projecting it. Like, it's like, that's the psychedelic business right now. Yes, there's a lot of smart guys that are into it and trying to stake out ground, but it ain't there yet. There's no one you could point to and say that company is definitely going to do it. Because anytime anyone gets a good business model, there's 12 other guys saying, yeah, we're doing that too. So unless you can find a way to claim patents over, a substantial use case, what are you really into right now? Like, other than raising money and trying not to spend it all before the government changes rules?
Should I bring Charlize in? Is it for her guest appearance now, or should I wait?
I think she'd probably run pretty hard, but I'm projecting that she'll change her mind.
All right, here's the group again. It was MYND with a Y, Life Sciences, MYND on the Canadian exchange. We had MindCure, of course, which we've talked about before, MCUR. PharmaTher Holdings is PHRM, and Neonmind, I like the name, Biosciences, simply known as Neon. This has been an extremely comprehensive psychedelic sector investor roundtable. You have to do your own research, people. Get educated. Make a decision before you spend your dollars. We can't guarantee anything that we say, and we also can't guarantee past performance will reflect future results. Good luck out there.
Do take shrooms because they're great.
Do take shrooms because they are great. Chris Perry, Galen, Michelle, Rob, see you next time. Equity Guru, Investor Roundtable.